Welcome back to Revved Up with Ram Thorburn here. I've got a music video reaction that I'm doing today. This is one that I've had requested from a number of people. This is Bloodshed from Upchurch. Now, I'm a big Upchurch fan. Now, before I get into this, actually, I just want to say that I actually tried to post a music video reaction yesterday to another new song from a bigger, more mainstream artist, something I don't normally cover, and YouTube immediately blocked it. So none of you guys have had a chance to see it yet, unfortunately. I'm fighting YouTube on that right now. I feel like I've been fighting YouTube seemingly every day at this point. Like I said, they're all, folks like me. They like to take us out back and yeller us. So we'll see how long this channel survives. I'm also working on some different ways that I'm going to be reformulating how I do the show. I think I'm going to start doing an hour-long show 3 days a week coming up. But anyways, I've got this music video from Upchurch here. It's called Bloodshed. I'm excited to do this. I've been an Upchurch fan for a while. I love Upchurch. I don't know how this one got by me, but I had not seen this one yet. And so a bunch of people started telling me, you need to do Bloodshed, you need to do Bloodshed. How did I miss this? Anyways, this is the first Upchurch song I've reacted to, and I've been listening to Upchurch for a while. Love Upchurch, so let's go ahead and get into this.
And I don't want to cast no stone, but I feel like I'm sitting on a throne that's about to self-implode. In a house made glass that is already cracked and destruction's coming fast. And
wow.
I see no love, I see no pride, I just see blood on our home flags. Yeah, on our own grass. Church. I woke up this morning, flipped the TV on, and I see a civil war in the country I call home. American flags, Confederate flags, and Nazis with swastikas. Hate groups throwing piss because they're mad at the monument.
Wow, all right, so he's just starting out, going right into it, talking about how Civil War, and this has been a topic that has been talked about a lot recently, is are we on course for Civil War? And if so, what does that look like? It could even be said that we might even already be in a civil war, which seems to be the case that Upchurch is making here. And this video is back from 2017. So this has been going on for a while now. We've been fighting the culture wars for a while. But especially this song, it sounds like it could have been recorded yesterday with everything that's been going on here in 2020. I mean, it's only been exacerbated here in 2020. And he's talking about American flags, Confederate flags. You got people flying the old German flags. I don't see too much of that, to be honest with you. I see a lot more communist flags than I do those other German flags, which we don't, disavow all that stuff as well. But he's gotten right into this, and he's talking about how. Let me run that back just a second. I played a little bit too long.
Confederate flags and Nazis with swastikas. Hate groups throwing piss because they're mad at a monument.
Yeah, he's talking about hate groups throwing piss because they're mad at a monument. And this is really interesting because we all know who's throwing piss. We all know who's throwing bottles of piss. That is Antifa. That's the communist black bloc agitators. And I think it's really interesting that he called them a hate group, because if you were to ask anybody like the SPLC or the Southern Poverty Law Center, it's people like the Proud Boys that are hate groups, even though they're not at all, and they have people of all different walks of life in them. But you could very easily call Antifa a hate group because at the base level, they hate America, and they want to destroy everything that America stands for. So I do think that's interesting that he's calling them out as a hate group, and I think that's very good. And he's talking about how they're doing it about the monuments. And what's really interesting about them going after the monuments, because we had Donald Trump got mocked endlessly when they were going after the Confederate monuments, and he said, "Well, who's next?" Thomas Jefferson and George Washington, and everybody mocked him. And then here in 2020, we actually have them tearing down Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, even Abraham Lincoln. Hell, they even were tearing down some abolitionists. Statues of abolitionists. They tore down a statue of Frederick Douglass, which really goes to show that it's not really about anti-slavery for them. That is the way that they galvanize support. These are anti-American communist agitators who hate America, hate everything that we stand for, and they're trying to erase exactly the progress that we've made. And so they use the past as a way to disassemble the future of America. And it's, they talk about anti-racism, and anti-racism isn't really about racism. And we'll get into more on that in just a minute. I don't want to keep rambling on here. But it is interesting that they use the monuments as a way to get, because if they went out and said, yeah, who wants to tear down capitalism, communism for America and all that, nobody would follow them. But when they make it about racism, when they make it about slavery, when they make it about things that touches people on an emotional level and actually has its roots in American history, well, all of a sudden they're able to galvanize support, and then they pull that bait and switch with communism, which is precisely what they do. Communism is one big subversive bait and switch. So anyways, let's go back here.
Throwing peace because they're mad at a monument represents a time where we advance from mistakes. Now you're making the mistake by taking that out of place.
Exactly. And he gets that just right. Talks about the progress that we've made, and that's what people don't seem to understand about America. Sure, yes, we were founded in a time when we had slavery, but at that time, slavery was a global institution. It was a worldwide institution. Countries all over the world, nations all over the world, empires all over the world instituted slavery at that time. It was the way of the world. We cannot view American history through presentism, where we judge our past by the morals of today. And what Upchurch touches on greatly here is how we have progressed and grown since then. And not only that, we have been the shining beacon for the rest of the world in making that progress. And so you have to look at the starting point and look how far we've come. And that's when you understand what the values laid out in the American founding actually paved the way for. They paved the way for a global, worldwide evil to be dissolved, and so that people from all different places in the world can come together under a shared set of values. It's the first country that was ever founded not on ethno-nationalism or ethnocentrism. It was founded on a set of ideas, a set of values, a guiding principle. And at the time, it was very radical. It was so far ahead of its time that most of the people were not ready for it. That is why it has been a slow evolution of America, but it was the founding principles, it was the founding ideals that set us on that path. And people need that context. They need to understand that. We always continue to get better.
Making the mistake by taking that out of place. You're stomping and spitting on it like you just whooped someone's ass. You fucking degenerate, get your lazy ass off the grass. This ain't a statue of slavery. Do you see any slaves?
Exactly. This isn't a statue of slavery. Do you see any slaves? No, we got rid of the slaves. But one thing, being from the South, I know Upchurch is from the South. He's from Tennessee. I'm from Georgia. I live in California now. But being from Georgia, being from the South, we see how the South is constantly ridiculed in pop culture, and we're always thought of as these backwards hicks. That's not what the South is. That's not what the South has grown into. Yet we're never allowed to shake our history. And so if you wonder why we want certain monuments to the South and people still wave the Confederate flag, it has nothing to do with the Civil War Confederacy. It has to do with the fact that we are constantly spit on, and we have our own representation of our own pride of the way of life where we're from in the South. It's a slower way of life. It's more rural. It's more country. It's different. And we have a sense of pride for that as well. And that's what the monuments and the Confederate flags represent. That, as well as lessons learned from the past that he's talking about. He's talking about when you tear them down, you don't no longer learn from the lessons of the past. So a lot of people just like to look at it and say, oh, well, it's just the stupid rednecks from the South, the racist rednecks from the South still trying to be racist and redneck. No, this is our big fuck you to everybody else that looks down on us, and then they all want to retire and come down to the South. Everybody moves down to the South because they like our way of living. As it's very NIMBY. It's very NIMBYist of the people in the North and the West Coast, who like to spit on the South, and then all of a sudden they go down there like, this isn't what I thought it was. Gavin McGinnis told a really funny story about the first time he went down to the South. He said he goes in this old country store, and there's this old black man and this old white man, and one of them walks in and they're like, oh, hey, what's up? How you doing? How's the kids? How's this and that? And Gavin looks at him, he's like, I thought you guys hated each other down here. And they're like, no, this is my buddy. He's coming over for dinner tonight, And he made an interesting point that in the North, they like the idea of black people, but they don't like them in practice. And we've seen that in certain instances where schools were integrating. They were busing kids from like Harlem into the Upper East Side and in some of the wealthier areas. And the liberal New York progressives, they were up in arms. They hated it. They didn't want it in their backyard. So they liked the idea of it. They didn't like it in practice. He said that in the South, it's like less people like the idea in practice, or they dislike the idea of other races in practice. But then, in ideas. Hold on. They dislike the idea of other people, but then in practice, they don't care. It's like they might be like, oh yeah, well, these people. But then when they see them in real life, they're like, it's just another person. We're cool. It's just kind of the South talk shit, or they're slower to change and they just don't want to admit certain things. But then they see people and they're like, oh yes, I don't have a problem with them. Not at all. They're cool. Whatever. And it's the exact opposite. And I would say that one is worse. The one where you don't like them in practice, that's kind of worse. Because not only does it mean that you are actually racist, but it also means you're dishonest. It means you're lying. It means you're gaslighting when you have that NIMBY mentality. You're all for it, but not in my backyard. That's what NIMBY means if you're not familiar with the term.
All I see is some idiots cause of place. All I see is some idiots cause of social media craze. What, you gonna catch me outside? Yeah, well, come catch your fade. Cause I bleed red, white, and blue. Y'all bleeding anger and hate.
Yeah, that's true. I bleed red, white, and blue, and y'all bleed anger and hate. And that is everything that these people are motivated by. What's really interesting with a lot of these people that want to tear down capitalism and abolish private property, well, it's because they don't have any. They haven't made good choices in their life, and they don't have any private property of their own, which I can relate to. I don't have much of my own either. But I also believe in the ideas that I can go out and achieve and gain that in the future. I always have hope, which is one of these things that these people don't believe in. They don't believe in a better future for themselves. It's just really, they just hate America. They hate everything it stands for because they feel like they've been left out. But, I don't know what to tell them. That's a cool little throne. You the man when they communist flag just waving at your hand. With the communist flag, yeah, exactly. I kind of missed that first part. I gotta hear what he was saying there.
You the man when they communist flag just waving at your hand. Bitch, I'll start a militia when the government crashes.
I'll start a militia when the government crashes. Hey, Upchurch, if you see this video, holla at your boy. I want to join your militia. I'll come post up with some arms with you. Yeah, we will go to war with the communists if they really try to take over this country. That will be the true start of the Civil War, is if the communists really try to take power. If they try to take our Second Amendment rights away, that is when we will all stand up and it is going to go down. And if that happens, well, Upchurch, holla at your boy.
Militia when the government crashes. Ain't light a fire under y'all's anti-American asses. Because y'all think y'all can run this country just smooth as molasses.
I don't even think that they think they can run this country as smooth as molasses. I don't think that's even ever been the point. I think he gets the point a little bit better when he talks about how they're just run by hate. I don't think it even has anything to do with how they think the country should run. Most of them don't even understand how governments function. They don't understand basic economics. They don't understand that they're very low information people. They run out and they say that Donald Trump is a fascist. Meanwhile, they're running around punching anybody who disagrees, forcing people to sit there with their fists up. Now, you open up those fingers and what does it look like? They're out there, and I'm not going to say that they are fascist, but they are fascistic. They use fascistic methods. And what we are seeing in America through all of the cronyism and all the corporatism, which these corporations tend to back, these Black Lives Matter and Antifa, all of our establishment tends to back that stuff. And the economic side of fascism is essentially the marriage of the corporation and the government. And that is what we have been seeing, especially over the last 10 to 15 years, as we see multinational conglomerations all coming together with the establishment government. That's why we see Wall Street, all the billionaires, they're supporting Joe Biden, a man with dementia, because he represents the establishment. Meanwhile, Donald Trump, despite the fact that he has the best economy on record in the history of the world, running before COVID hit, from a typical financial perspective, you would think it would make sense for them to go for Donald Trump because he seems to be the one who understands how to create the most prosperous economy. But it's no longer about a prosperous economy, even for these corporations that are driving the economy. It is about being tied up in one with the political establishment. And that's what's so alarming, because they actually are implementing the economic models of fascism through the Democrats. And then you have all of these Antifa Black Lives Matter people going out and rioting against Republicans, against Donald Trump. And even though they don't necessarily like Democrats, they're still siding with Democrats, and Democrats are currying favor with them. So if anybody's a fascist, if anybody's closer to fascism, it is absolutely the establishment left and the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa, all of them. Fascism is kind of this amorphous type thing, where it does involve national pride and that kind of thing, which is what they don't have, and that does tend to exist on the right. But the right doesn't have the economic side of fascism, and they don't have the totalitarian nature of fascism. When you talk about pride in America, it's talking about pride in the founding, which is essentially pride in individualism, which is antithetical to fascism, where the nation comes first. Yes, we say America first, but what is America? America is built on a set of ideas where we can all find our own way and choose how to live. So it's not collectivist in nature, where both fascism and communism is collectivist in nature. So very, very primary differences between the American right and the international right, the European right, which is what fascism really is. That's the European right. The American right doesn't resemble that. Sure, it's patriotism and pride for America. It does have a nationalistic sense, but it's also much more individualist and less collectivist than the European right, which is essentially the fascist wing.
Just smooth as molasses. You got people with signs saying that Black Lives Matter. Yeah, Black Lives Matter, but my life matters as well. Y'all.
Great point. He's talking about Black Lives Matter, and everybody gets flack for saying all lives matter. And they don't seem to understand that they make these kind of weak cases about how it's black people that are having the trouble. So saying Black Lives Matter doesn't mean your life doesn't matter. But what it does mean is you're bifurcating people along racial lines, which is what we fought for hundreds of years. Last couple hundred years, since the founding of this country, we have been fighting to move in a direction where people of all different races can come together under the shared American values, under that shared social fabric. But when you start separating out by races and you start viewing the world through a racial lens, all you're ever going to get is racism. And that's when you look at the new movement, anti-racism. They say it's not enough to not be racist. You must be actively anti-racist. But anti-racism, they want the same damn things as racism. They want discrimination based on race. They want you to be viewed by the color of your skin and not solely by the content of your character. It goes very much against the dreams of Martin Luther King Jr. and all of the progress we made in the 60s in terms of the racial divisions here. And for a long time, things were starting to get really good. The early 2000s, black and white people seemed to get along just fine. Racism wasn't even really a thing, but it's been manufactured, especially since the days of Obama. He really fanned the flames of all of this, coming out saying things like with Trayvon Martin, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. What do you mean? Just because he's black? And so he really fueled all of this stuff, and it is a step backwards. It is going against everything that America has fought for, where we don't view people by their race. And so that's why people say all lives matter and say we shouldn't say Black Lives Matter, we shouldn't say white lives matter, we shouldn't say Latino lives matter, we shouldn't say any of these things, because American lives matter. American lives, no matter what race you are, we all need to figure out how to live together. And we were doing pretty good with that until critical race theory really took over the social consciousness.
Life matters as well. Y'all trying to get to the swimming pool, but you stuck in the well. And you can shout and can yell, but no one's gonna compare. When you out tearing up a city, that your city helped bail. And how your kids gonna learn from mistakes.
Yeah, he's talking about tearing up the cities. And we have been seeing, at Portland, they're at over, 140 days straight of rioting right now. Sure, there's been some ebbs and flows in it. But you see, especially like in Atlanta, where I'm from, they were going around and they were burning down black-owned businesses in the names of Black Lives Matter. How can you tell me that is not... How can you tell me you're anti-racist or you're against racism when you burn down black businesses. Because it's never actually about what they say it's about. It is a subversive communist tactic that they use, where they bait and switch you. I've already talked about this, but we can see this. We can see this. You know, they galvanize the support under something that regular, everyday Americans can appreciate, and then once you start seeing them acting, because they're never able to control the mob. They're never able to control the mob. So once you see them start doing things that are like, wait, you're burning down black businesses. How is this Black Lives Matter? All of a sudden the narrative slips, and they call you a fascist if you call it out. So it's the left is a serious problem, and they're psychopathic. They are absolutely psychopathic. They don't care about logic and reason. They don't care if there's any kind of consistency. They want power, raw power, and that is it. And these people think that they will come into power. They will not come into power. They are useful idiots. And they are being used by the establishment to regain control from a populist movement under Donald Trump. And so they're using these people to try to regain control, and then it'll further shore up the establishment power. It'll give them an excuse to go even further in corrupting and disrupting the American way of life. And all of these people who are out being the useful idiots for the establishment, they think they're going to get power. They're going to be the first ones lined up and shot. That's what's going to happen, because they're the revolutionaries who know how to make a revolution happen. So when they realize that they got fucked in this entire thing, the people who fucked them don't want them to create another revolution. So they're the first ones gone. It won't be conservatives. It won't be Republicans. It'll be the liberals, the people on the fence, the sort of moderate people. It'll be the revolutionaries. And then they'll deal with the conservatives last. That's how they operate. Just read a history book. That's all you have to do. Read a history book. You know, it may not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes.
And how your kids gonna learn from mistakes we made in the past when you were racing that shit like you wanted to be laughs.
There you go. There you go. He's talking about how are you supposed to learn from the past when you're erasing it. And that is what the big thing about Antifa is about. They want to erase the history. This is what communism always does. They go into the place where they live, they vilify the past, and then they erase it. They scrub it from the record so that they can repeat everything that we learned from the past. You know, they're trying to scrub down, you know, all of the founding fathers so that we forget the history of the ideas that this country was founded upon, so that they can implement their own policies that are going to be just as discriminatory. They're going to be a return back to the racism of the past. They might angle their ire differently. They might target different people. They might, you know, and they could say that they're out for the minorities. They're still using racism. It's here in California. They actually are voting to repeal the civil rights, the civil rights language in the California Constitution, the state constitution, which will make it legal to discriminate based on race here in California. And they're calling it the affirmative action bill because they're trying to point it out as a way where they can use affirmative action to benefit people of color. But at the same time, they also say that white supremacy is a huge issue and that there are all these white supremacists everywhere. Well, if you get rid of that language and you have one of these white supremacists that they believe are everywhere in power, what do you think they're going to do with that when you take away the civil rights language in the state constitution? You think that's going to benefit minorities? No, it's not. It's not one bit. These people don't think that far, though. They're just reactionaries, and they're so gullible.
Like you wanted to be laughs. And I don't want to cast no stone, but I feel like I'm sitting on a throne that's about to self and woe. In a house made glass that is already cracked, and destruction's coming fast. And I see no love, I see no pride, I just see blood on our home flags. Yeah, on our own grass. Yeah. From the outside looking in at all the shit that's going on in the world, man. In a perspective of mine, it's kind of like you're sitting in a field with tall grass and it just rained, and you got bald tires, and you're on the acceleration so much that you ain't going nowhere. And if you ain't going nowhere, I ain't going nowhere. Because we gotta move together as a country to get to the next destination.
Exactly, and that's a great sentiment. Unfortunately, I don't see it happening because the other side isn't trying to move together with America. The other side is trying to destroy America. They want to tear down everything that we stand for, and they want to gulag anybody who actually believes in the original founding principles of America. So, unfortunately, it's a great sentiment, Upchurch. Not going to happen. Not going to happen because we are on two entirely different realities. We're on two entirely different value bases. And they're not going to be able to come together the way that and move forward together. We're going to be pulling in opposite directions until that chain between us breaks and one side goes over the cliff. And let's hope it's the communists. And that's another reason why I think that civil war is an inevitability at this point. I don't think, and what civil war is going to look like, it's not going to be, people say civil war and they think the old civil war where it's two sides in uniform marching up into a field and firing at each other. That's not what it's going to be like. It's going to be more of an insurgency. You're going to see violence on the streets. You might be living your everyday life, and then you're going to turn on the news and you're going to find out there was a gun battle a mile away from where you are. And you'll be like, whoa, what happened? 20 people just got in a big-ass gunfight and there's like 10 people dead. That's how the Civil War is going to go down. Or you're going to hear about an explosion at some building in your city. It's going to be very cellular in that sense. It's not going to be war of old. The way that war happens is not the way that war happened in the 1860s. Technology has changed that. Communications technology has changed that. And just the entire nature that this isn't two nations or two exact rivals competing. It's going to be cellular blocks. So like the way Antifa operates is they're not a national organization. I mean, technically, they are in a sense, but they're broken up into cells that are independent under the Antifa banner. And that's a way for them to organize, but without having the susceptibility of like a RICO that can take down the entire organization at once. You take out one, they can't be directly linked to the others, and those are now unaffected. So that's how they operate. It's how terror cells operate as well, and Antifa is a terrorist organization. So.
And I don't want to cast no stone, but I feel like I'm sitting on a throne that's about to self-implode. In a house made of glass that is already cracked and destruction's coming fast. And I see no love, I see no pride, I just
that is such a cool little backwoods throne. Love that thing. That was a really good video, really good song. I mean, Upchurch always brings it. Upchurch, I don't think I've ever really heard anything from him that I didn't like. Of course, I've heard things that I'm like, oh wow, that one really stands out. This is one of those songs. This one really stands out for Upchurch. I don't know how it's just now that I'm seeing this, because he did an amazing job on this. He called out a lot of things. And what even fascinates me is that this is from 2017. Upchurch was a little ahead of his time in putting this out here, because we saw some of this going on in 2017, but it has really accelerated and it's really taken shape here in 2020. So big ups to Upchurch on that. So I give this one 2 thumbs up. Very, very good, and I look forward to Upchurch. You got to put together some more political messaging in some of your songs. Give me some more to respond to, because that's typically what I respond to. So I hope to hear more like this from Upchurch. But anyways, guys, if you haven't already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, hit that notification bell, because we all know it's voices like mine that are first to be taken out back and old yellered by the folks at Big Tech. If you want to follow me on any of those big tech platforms, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Ram Thorburn. Also on some of the alt tech sites, Parler, Minds, and Pill.net, also at Ram Thorburn. And if you would like to contribute to the channel, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal down in the description below. Anyways, guys, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.